Let me just give you a bit of history. Canada is a very welcoming country for immigrants. The purpose of Canadian immigration, it has two main purposes. One is to unite families. So we allow husbands to sponsor wives. We allow parents to sponsor children. Those are the kind of, and also to sponsor parents and grandparents. Um, at the same time, we also have a second goal, and that is to bring in enough people so that Canada's economy can keep growing at full employment. Okay, so those are the two main ones. Maybe many years ago, Canada put in a point system where it selected people to come to Canada based on their education, their language skills, their work experience, and their age. And we were bringing in a significant number of people that way. But early in the 2000s, the point system that they put out was fairly generous. And part of the law said that if someone qualified with enough points, they had to process their application. So maybe 15 years ago, they ended up getting so many applications, they created a huge backlog. And that backlog, rose to be more than 100,000 cases. And it was taking people 5, 6, 7 years to be approved because everybody had to be evaluated on a first come, first served basis. That clearly didn't work well because the backlog was so large. At the same time, the country's needs were changing and they had to process everybody who applied. So they did something that was very un-Canadian. They stopped the process. They tried to fix it a bit, and then they canceled all the files in the backlog, okay, which created a huge problem and left maybe 500,000 people who'd been waiting to come to Canada. It left them out of the picture. So they reorganized the system, and they came in. They kept the same point system for people in terms of their work. And then they added a few new programs, but they added a secondary point system. And they asked people not to apply for immigration, but to send them a profile. So if people would fill in these information forms, tell them about their language skills, tell them about their education, they would assess points. And they would put everybody in a pool. It was called the Express Entry Pool. And they would pick every 2 weeks people right off the top of the pool with the highest scores. What they promised in return was because they wouldn't have too many applications, that within 6 months of getting picked, you could be a permanent resident. Okay, and that came in 2014, and they've kept their word on the processing times. If you're selected, you have 2 to 3 months to get your paperwork together, your medicals and police reports, and then your application will be processed within 6 months. And so that's been a very consistent factor. But they also changed this point system in terms of how they assign the points to meet the current needs. And in Canada, we have an urgent need for people to grow the country. Our population growth is too low. We would be in danger of disappearing in 50 years if we didn't bring in new people. And almost, in fact, 100% of the growth of our Canadian population and the economy is tied to immigration. So we need immigrants. But what they decided was they needed young people. They really wanted young people to come to Canada. And their definition of a young person is someone between the ages of 20 and 30. Okay? Well, that's a definition of my grandchildren, very young people. And there were many, many thousands of people who were in their 30s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, who wanted to come to Canada, who had great language, who had great education. But because they would lose all their age points by 45, they just couldn't get enough points to qualify. And it put things in a bit of a problem because, if you already have a master's degree, you can't get any more points. If you already speak excellent English, because it's the language you were born with, and you do well on your tests, you can't get any more points. You could get more points if you came to Canada and studied, but if you're in your 40s and you've already got your career set, what good does studying do? Maybe in your 20s sometimes. If you're at the same time, you couldn't also, if you got a job in Canada, you got some more points, but even sometimes that wasn't enough. So they actually made a change in 2016 that said, well, if you come and start a business that is big enough, in other words, having 6 or 7 employees, we'll give you an extra 200 points. And to let you know, The current pass mark, the last one was at 472. Now, to get 472 points, you would need to have something like a master's degree, score 8 or 9 on IELTS tests, have 4 or 5 years work experience, have 1 or 2 years work experience in Canada, and have a Canadian degree. So 472 points is for people who are a very narrow range of people. But if you are, like with your particular background, and we haven't got the exact points, but you'll probably score around 300. Well, to get to 470 would be almost impossible, but if you set up and buy a business, you get 200 points. Now you're at 500. So as soon as you have the business set up and you're approved to do the business, you get those 200 points, which means we can file for permanent residence even before you're in Canada, but when you're getting ready to start your business, okay? And we can file for that, and as long as your business is started, you're going to get an invitation to apply within 2 weeks. Then the process starts that you're on the, get 2 months to prepare and 6 months to process. Meanwhile, you come to Canada, you set up your business. That business has to be a big enough business to get 200 points because you have to be a senior manager. And by definition, a senior manager is someone who manages managers. So if you have an operation, it might only have 7 or 8 employees or 6, and you have 1 or 2 supervisors and you run the business, that will qualify. Okay? So you have to invest enough money to either start a business and grow it or buy a business with that many people in it. And typically, although it varies, to start a business of that size in Canada, you need around $250,000 Canadian. Okay, so the good part of that is that if you can start the business, it just has to you want to make sure it's big enough. Okay, and then you're on the fast track to becoming a Canadian permanent resident. Once you're a permanent resident, we hope that you're in a business you enjoy. You want to get up in the morning and go to work, knowing that you're going to enjoy your day. You're going to make sure that you're working hard so that the money you've risked to start your business, you're going to earn it and not lose it. And so, when you get your permanent resident, it's great. Now you can still do whatever you want. If for some reason, though, the business was to fail after you're a permanent resident, or you decided to sell it or do anything else, it doesn't matter. You're still a permanent resident. There are no requirements that say you must keep your business operating for 5 years, etc. As soon as you're a permanent resident in Canada, you have some rights, and those rights include the right to live anywhere, work anywhere in the country, or not work. You can go lie on the beach, okay, if you can find a beach most times. And you can then become a Canadian citizen after 3 years. And the only difference between a Canadian citizen and a permanent resident is citizens can vote, and citizens can complain about the weather, okay? You can't do that if you're a permanent resident, right? So that's sort of the outline of the programs. Now, the normal way we would do this is that you would find a business. We then apply to the Service Canada to approve your business for something called a labor market impact assessment. That process can take a little while, but if they approve you, then we apply for a work permit, okay? Now, some people can do it without going through that whole assessment process. They still have to start up a business, and there are 2 ways to do it. Either you can just start a business as a subsidiary of your current business, okay? In that case, it's quite simple to get a 1-year work permit. The only difference in that program and the other program is you have to wait a year before you get the extra points. As long as that business can be seen to be able to afford a subsidiary in Canada to do almost any business, it doesn't have to be the same business, but you could set it up to do the same business you're doing now. You will get a 1-year work permit as long as we've incorporated your company, put together a business plan, and found a place of business, okay, an office, to get started. You'll get a 1-year permit. At the end of that 1 year, you have to show progress along your business plan. So if your business plan says you're going to have, $1 million in sales in 4 years, year 1 will be 250,000, year 2 will be 300,000, whatever. As long as by the end of that first year you've hired 1 or 2 people, you've got the business up and you've got clients and customers, they will renew you for 2 years, and then you get another 2 years and another 2 years up to 7 years. Well, At any time in there, when your company has enough employees, we can then take, after 1 year, we can get the 200 points and away we go. The advantage of that is that you don't have to put up capital up front to start your Canadian business. All right, you just have to have a good business plan. You could buy a business, in which case you get a 3-year permit right away. You still have to wait 1 year for permanent residence, but it's less risk from a capital side. Okay, with that visa, you can come and go all you want. You don't have to be in Canada 10 months of the year. What you have to have is your business has to keep running, and then you still get the 200 points after 12 months on your work permit. Okay, so that's called an intercompany transfer. It's the same visa that is used by hundreds of companies around the world under the World Trade Organization to transfer executives and managers around the world. You can take other people in your company, if they're senior managers, or if you had, if you were making a unique product and you needed that special person who knew how to make the product, might not be a manager, might be a technical guy, well, you could move him as well. There is no minimum number of people as long as the companies are big enough. And there's a third way. You qualify under the Canada-Europe Trade Agreement for what's called a treaty investor application. Same idea as the other two. You get a business in Canada. Now, this one you do have to start your business and put money at risk, to show you're going to do this. We don't have to go through the government approval process. We just have to show a big enough investment. The difference there is that you can have 2 people each investing 50%. There will be equal applicants, and you can then bring additional people who you need to have your business succeed to work for you in Canada. All right, now you and the other owner would get 200 points if the business is big enough. The people you bring in as employees would get 50 points, okay, towards their permanent residence. With that, you get a 3-year work permit. Again, you have to wait 1 year to apply for permanent residence. Okay, so there's 3 programs that you would appear to qualify for. To make sure, we need to know what your scores would be in IELTS. With all 3 programs, to take advantage of express entry, you must hit 6.0 in IELTS on all 4 categories. Okay, that shouldn't be a problem for people who speak English, right? Although I had to pass that test to become a consultant, and I just scraped by on listening, and my wife got my marks, and she said I could have told them that without you taking a test. Okay, so we have those options for you. We also have to have your education evaluated to make sure that it's equivalent to a Canadian degree at a specific level. Okay, those are the requirements. They are not requirements to get your work permit. The language and education requirements are before we apply for permanent residence. So if it's the first program I talked about where you can get permanent residence fast, we would have to have those results quickly. We also like to get those results to make sure that you're going to score high enough so that 200 points helps you. So 3 different programs. It depends on what you want to do. The good news is, as long as they're under 22, when we file for permanent residence, they can be included in your application. The other issues would be, and I think you've answered them already, you're not admissible to Canada, you didn't rob a bank in the last week or 2, or have a drunk driving charge or anything like that. As long as those things, nothing like that interferes, and there are no health issues that are very serious, you would have no problem in coming to Canada. In terms of setting up a business, the key points we would need to know would be what type of business. We have ways to help you. We have working on our team a very experienced real estate broker who's also an immigration consultant. He's set out a list of properties that are available. Every 2 weeks we get a new list. If you wanted to buy a business, he has the details on that, and they would be businesses that would be eligible for the programs. We also have another individual who's another immigration consultant, but works with franchisors. Sometimes, if you want to come to a new country to set up a business, a franchise is a pretty good idea because you get a lot of help. You have a proven business concept, and they have a team of people that can help you out. So we have those kinds of resources. Or if you have a family member who's in Canada and knows of business opportunities, you can work through them. All of that's available. So what we ask is, we'll send you a bunch of information once we're retained. With that information, you can find a business, and narrow it down to one or two. The second area would be what part of the country you want to live in. There are lots and lots of businesses for sale. If you can tell us a specific industry, that will help. Okay, you are free, based on all of the programs, to invest in any kind of business. It doesn't have to be the same as the business you're in. If you secretly just wanted to open a dance studio, or you really wanted to open a restaurant, you can do that. It's your skills as business owners and managers that are important, not the type of business that you're in. Okay, but you do have to know what kind of business, because we have to put together a business plan, and we use a professional company to do the business plan with all of the information from the business. If you're buying a business, we don't need the business plan so much. We can use 3 years worth of tax returns, to show what to show what the current business is doing. It's when you're setting up a new business, all on your own, that's when the business plan is very helpful. So we can help you through all the steps in the process, but we can't choose the business for you. We will send you a list, even before you have to decide what you want to do. We'll send you a list of franchises that are available that are qualifying. We'll send you a list of business properties that are for sale right now. And that list basically gets updated every couple of weeks, because properties sell. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about how's business in Toronto. I was in the corporate world for 30 years, so I do understand, the necessities of a business. I operate my own practice, so I know what it's like to be a small business person in Canada. And there are a lot of opportunities here. Many small companies won't survive the pandemic, which means there'll be a bargain. And the pandemic will pass. Already there are some industries in Canada that are doing very well. If you run a takeout restaurant with no table service, your business has gone up by 30-40% this year. If you run a delivery business like FedEx or UPS, your business is up 20 or 30%. If you run a campground or a business, a resort up in the wilderness in Canada, and there are many, your business is way up, because Canadians are booking holidays now, in all of these resorts north of Toronto. So there are some of the restaurants there are doing very well. It just depends on what kind of business it is. If you're a delivery company, like I said, a delivery company, if you're a tech company, Canada is becoming the new Silicon Valley because of the U.S. restrictions on immigrant labor. A lot of high-tech companies are moving to Toronto and Montreal, and so there are a lot of IT jobs here. Okay, so the idea would be, if you want to start the same business you're in, then my advice would be to do an intercompany transfer, because you can come and set up, if your expertise that you have in your current business would be applied, you could apply that in Canada. You could set up the same business in Canada by simply, with minimal investment. Okay, you would have a challenge that you would have to grow that business over the first year, but you could certainly do that. That's something you already know. If you know it applies, the kind of advice and that you do. If not, if it's hard to move that or to translate that kind of business to Canadian businesses, then I would recommend the first business that you would find a business to either purchase or start that would be employing 6 or 7 people in an area that you would feel comfortable in. If you don't like, the restaurant business, don't do the restaurant business. But there are so many different ones. One of the areas that many people don't think about is we have something called senior care. In Canada, we don't keep our seniors at home with us. We send them to live in private care homes where they take care of these people. Okay, and that's not because we don't like them. It's because they don't like to live with their children. Right? They want to feel free and independent. They don't want to be a burden to their kids. So they go and live in places like independent living centers, and then when they need additional help, which many of them do as they get older, they get into situations where they either can't stay in their own home, and again, many senior Canadians own their own homes. So the first choice is to stay in their homes as long as they can, and the government encourages that, but it means they need help. They need someone to bring them their meals. They need people to bathe them, or to make sure they're taking their medicine, or to give them transportation. Well, there are companies now, private companies, that hire caregivers. So the owner of the company doesn't do the care, but they hire caregivers to go to people's homes and help seniors stay in their homes. And the seniors, pay them significant sums every day to do the work. The personal support workers are trained individuals who come from our colleges. A typical, fee would be in the $5,000-6,000 a month, to have somebody coming in your house every day to do the cooking and cleaning and other work. There are also what they call independent living homes, where seniors go to live in their own apartment, but the food is provided to them and cleaning. Well, again, they like to stay there as long as they can, but sometimes they start to need help as they get older. So again, these service companies provide the help on a daily basis, and the business you would get. There are franchise operations now where you get into the business, the franchisor gives you the training, gives you the business plan, helps recruit clients for you, and is there to help you all along. You need an office, but then you hire, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 caregivers as your business expands. That's a very popular business, and there is a huge demand. The biggest reason is the same reason Canada needs young people. They don't want 20 to 30-year-olds because they're good looking or they're energetic. They want them because they can pay taxes for 50 years. Because in Canada, we have twice as many people retiring as we have entering the labor force. And that's because of the baby boom generation that I'm part of. And we're becoming real burdens on the Canadian economy. So we want lots of young people to come to Canada. So setting up, there's more and more people who are now, the largest population group in this country are between the ages of 73 and 58, which has twice as many people in it as the group under 19. And so those people are aging. And as they age, they need more help. So this market, without any other reason, is simply growing. Another big impetus has been that because of the pandemic, the one problem Canada had was that 80% of the people who have died are seniors who lived in senior homes. The government-run homes that are there for people that can't afford to live on their own or can't afford to pay for extra care. So families don't want to put their seniors in those homes now. They want to keep them in their own homes or keep them in other private facilities for as long as they can. So there's a big demand. I'm sorry about going on about this, but when you see the list of businesses for sale, you can choose the best one for you. And there are financial services businesses, there are tax service businesses, there are pet grooming franchises, there are almost everything can be franchised in Canada. So take a look at the lists to see what business you're in. Once you find the business, then we can facilitate the introduction to the owners of those businesses or the franchises of those businesses. And once we put the paperwork together, our job is to make sure that what you choose is going to qualify. Okay, because we don't want to start any of this. This is too long a process, and it's too important a process for you and your families. We don't want to start anything that's going to fail. All right, our success rate is we aim for 100%, and barring any crazy decision by the immigration department, which we will fight in court, we hit 100%. It's because we take enough time up front to give you all the information to help you choose. For the owner-operator LMIA, there's only one person on the application who must own 51% or more of the business. The intercompany transfer can have multiple people, and they don't have to be owners. They have to be senior managers or people with special knowledge. So if you can imagine, again, Apple, the big company Apple, transferring managers around the world. They don't own Apple, but as long as they're managing enough people, they can be transferred. So the programs are different. I would think that the owner-operator would be the first choice, or the intercompany transfer if you don't want to risk money, and instead you think your business concept is easily transferable to Canada. The short path to permanent resident, the fastest path, you need to meet a certain standard of English. It's called Canadian Language Benchmark 7, or on an IELTS test, you must hit 6.666 in all 4 categories. Okay, that's minimum. If you don't hit it, you can't qualify. There are other programs with a lower language standard, but that gets into a bit more complicated requirements and net worth requirements, and takes 3 to 5 years. They're much more complicated programs. These programs that I'm talking about are all federal programs. You can live anywhere in Canada. They don't change quickly. You can count on them being there the way we've described. Yes, absolutely. These are work permit first programs. So you come on a work permit, then you apply for permanent residence. On the work permit, your spouses could also get a work permit open. They can do any work they want. Your children are allowed to come and study, and the family gets health care after 90 days. Okay, so as soon as they're in Canada, they get part of the education system. If they're under, grade 12, if they're under 18 years of age, education is free. If they're, and by the way, education in Canada is uniform across the country. It's very, very similar. You might hear about one university being better than another. It's not. It really doesn't matter. 10 years later, nobody cares which university you went to. It's what kind of work you do. Well, for example, if you're going to buy an automobile repair shop, it will include the shop, the tools, the workers, the customer list. Okay, so sometimes there is property involved. If you're going to buy a franchise, sometimes you have to buy the location where the franchise is in terms of a vacant lot, and then you build a franchise building on it. Okay, but you can't just buy real estate to live in. That doesn't qualify for any program. No, there's no restriction on foreign ownership of real estate. There are some taxes you may have to pay more than a Canadian would, but there is no restriction on you investing in Canadian real estate, but it doesn't get you immigration. No, not unless they're hiring their own people to manage the business. I mean, if they buy a massive shopping mall that has 200 stores, and they have to hire a manager and all of the workers to clean everything, yeah, that's a business. But if they're just hiring a business, a property that has 1 or 2 tenants, that's no different from buying a private home. It won't count. They have to work in the business. Certain restaurant, if you buy a McDonald's restaurant, it's got 80 employees. Unfortunately, you can't buy a McDonald's restaurant because you have to be a Canadian resident or permanent or citizen. But many other franchises will have, for a $300,000 investment, you get, 10, 15 employees. When you see the lists, you'll see that the people that have put these lists together are immigration consultants who are also professionals in the other field. So they've picked out businesses that will qualify, number one. Number two, the franchises will all deal with immigrants. Okay, there are several franchises will not. You have to be a Canadian permanent resident. You have to have a Canadian credit rating. But the ones that we're forwarding are franchises that will definitely do it. And I mean, companies like UPS. UPS, you get a territory. UPS now is into goods handling. They don't want to deliver to people's homes. So they have franchises who own the trucks, hire the drivers, and manage a delivery area. That's a UPS franchise, and they like immigrants. They have many of their franchisees now are immigrants. People who came on a work permit, got permanent residence. They sell additional territories. There's all kinds of these sort of businesses that will welcome immigrants, and that's the list that we send you. Will be those kinds of businesses. But to get our experts involved to help you, you have to choose one or two. If you want to proceed from now, the most important thing is you have to decide what kind of business you want. So I'll send to you the links to the franchising and to purchasing. Start looking at these kind of businesses, and when you find something, that's when and you say, okay, I want to proceed, and this is the kind of business I'm interested in. That's when we will send you a retainer agreement. It will show all of the fees, all of the costs involved, all of the steps. Okay. And then as soon as you send us the initial deposit, we get working. Okay. That's sort of the process, but we want you to have as much information as possible to make an informed decision. So if you need questions answered, if you want more calls, if you get a business idea and you say, I really like this, but I don't know, let us know. Send us the details. We'll tell you if it's going to work. Okay. And until you've actually picked the business, we're basically your advisors, can line you up to get all of the services that you need. As long as you're happy with what you've heard, it's to find the business, and then we'll take it from there.